The hallway was long and silent, lit only by the faint glow from a lamp in the living room. At its far end, Emily's bedroom door stood wide open, revealing an impenetrable blackness. The void seemed to breathe, heavy and patient, as though waiting for something. Then, she emerged from the darkness. Her figure began to form as she stepped forward, her long nightgown rustling softly against the wooden floor. It was 5 a.m., and the house was still, save for the quiet click of her slippers. She moved purposefully, her face unreadable, her pale blue eyes locked ahead. The old clock in the hallway ticked steadily, marking time in measured beats. Emily reached the kitchen and flicked on the light, casting a soft glow across the room. She moved to the stove, filled the kettle, and set it to boil. The morning was hers, as it always had been. The world outside could wait. She prepared her tea with the same precision she'd had for years. 1 scoop of loose leaves, steeped for exactly 4 minutes. No more, no less. The scent of lilac from the vase on the counter mixed with the rich fragrance of the brewing tea, filling the small kitchen with a warm, comforting aroma. Sitting at the table, Emily stared at the steam rising from her cup. The silence of the house enveloped her, familiar and soothing. But today, something gnawed at her. A deep, unsettled feeling in the pit of her stomach. Today was going to be important. At 7:30, Emily stepped outside, standing tall and composed. The crisp morning air greeted her as the sun peeked through the branches of the old oak tree in her yard. She smoothed her dress as Jason Miller approached, carrying a brown paper bag from the market. "Morning, Miss Turner," Jason called cheerfully. Emily offered a tight-lipped smile. "Good morning, Jason." As he reached her, she noticed a little boy tugging at Emily's sleeve. His face was round, dotted with freckles, and his eyes sparkled with mischief. "Miss Emily, can I have another cookie?" he asked eagerly. Emily's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened for a brief moment. "No more cookies for now, darling. You'll spoil your lunch." Her voice was sweet, but there was a sharpness lurking beneath. The boy pouted but didn't argue. Jason, unaware of the fleeting change in Emily's expression, chuckled. "You always spoil the neighborhood kids." Emily simply nodded, adjusting her purse. "Have a lovely day, Jason," she said, stepping past him. She was on her way to church. Inside the small Sunday school room, 5 women sat in soft conversation, their Bibles open before them. The air was thick with unspoken tension, long-standing friendships tainted by resentment, petty grievances that had festered over time. Emily entered, nodding politely before taking her usual seat. She folded her hands in her lap, her eyes scanning each of them. She remembered everything, every betrayal, every whispered insult, every condescending look disguised as kindness. She didn't know why she couldn't let it go. She only knew that it had to end. The moment arrived suddenly. Emily rose from her seat, reaching into her purse with practiced ease. The hammer felt solid, familiar. She moved quickly, bringing it down on Sarah's head with a sickening crack. A chunk of skull split open as she collapsed forward. The others barely had time to react. Margaret gasped, but Emily swung again, knocking her back and unconscious. Jessica's scream barely escaped her throat before Emily stuffed a handkerchief into her mouth, silencing her. Carla tried to run, but Emily caught her, striking her once, twice, until she crumpled. That left Evelyn. The oldest of them all, Evelyn sat frozen, her trembling hands frozen in fear. Emily approached slowly, crouching beside her. "Look at me, dear," she whispered. Evelyn's wide, watery eyes met hers, confusion and terror mixing in her gaze. Emily smiled, a dreadful, knowing smile. Then she swung the hammer, Evelyn's dentures hit the floor with a dull thud as her body slumped sideways. A muffled whimper caught Emily's attention. Jessica was still alive, her eyes pleading. Emily's face softened, tears welling up. "I'm so sorry, dear," she murmured, brushing Jessica's cheek. "This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do." Jessica's lips trembled beneath the cloth stuffed in her mouth. Emily shook her head. "But don't worry, dear. I'm not going to kill you." Jessica's eyes widened. "You're not going to." Emily grabbed her hand and slammed the hammer down, shattering her fingers. Jessica's muffled screams filled the room as Emily pulled a pair of scissors from her bag and, without hesitation, cut her tongue in half. Jessica's body writhed in agony. Emily wiped the blood from her fingers, tucked the scissors back into her purse, and stepped over the bodies. She had to get home. Jason spotted Emily returning, her dress strangely disheveled. "Miss Turner," he called, rushing over. Emily stiffened. Jason caught up, panting. "I wanted to talk for a moment." Emily forced a smile. "I'm in a bit of a rush, dear." Jason frowned. "You've got something on your dress. Are you okay?" Emily sighed. She was so close to home. She reached into her purse, her fingers closing around the knife. Before Jason could react, Emily drove the blade into his temple. Jason's body twitched violently before he collapsed behind a car. Emily pulled the knife free, watching as his life flickered out. Then she turned and walked home. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Emily sat in her chair, staring into the flames. They would find the bodies soon, and they would come for her. Footsteps approached the house. She heard the front door creak open, followed by slow, deliberate steps behind her. A voice, desperate, raw, called out her name. "Emily!" She barely heard it. The fire was mesmerizing. The voice grew louder. "Emily!" The footsteps were closer now, heavy with emotion. Then, at the top of his lungs, "Emily!" Her head snapped to the left. What? You little..." The axe came down, splitting her skull. She slumped forward, the firelight glistening off the blood running down her face. Behind her, Caleb staggered back, dropping the axe. His breath came in ragged sobs. He fell to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down his face as he reached out toward her, his voice breaking. "Mama!"